on today's podcast of Data for All, the CDO Roundtable. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Apigian, where we want to empower you to think different with data. Now, for just this intro, Charlie Yielding isn't with me, but we wanted to give you some context as to what this CDO Roundtable is. So Charlie and I, along with Shauna Sprague, were at the Analytics Summit here in Nashville on October 2nd and 3rd, and we had the pleasure of interviewing some of the top data professionals in the region. And so one thing we decided to do was get a few of our good CDO friends. Now, what's a CDO? That is a Chief Data Officer. And we got them together and just asked them some questions of what it's like to be a CDO these days. What is it? And what are their challenges, the barriers, as well as the future for data within large communities? Charlie and I had a wonderful time. You'll hear at the end of this, both of us did record an outro as well to summarize what we heard. But just to give you a little bit more context here, we were in a very busy conference, so you'll hear a lot of background. But with that, Jason Beyer from Bridgestone, Shruti Sharma from Ingram, Joe Melvin from Nissan, as well as Johnathan Tate from Caterpillar Financial were our guests. And you'll hear each one of them introduce themselves, go into a lot of our different questions. And so might as well go right to it. Let's get to the interview. On today's podcast of Data for All, Chief Data Officers. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
And today we're going to think differently because we have an amazing roundtable of what people may not know a lot about, which is a chief data officer or the lead in their organizations in the data space. And so we have this new peer group here in Nashville, and I just had to grab them. We're at the Analytics Summit, and we are going to just talk about what is that role, and then also I know Charlie has a bunch of questions for you.
I'm chomping at the bit to ask you guys all the questions immediately, because it's the concept of data leadership is relatively new, and you guys get to define that for yourselves. And we were talking a little bit before about how excited you were to get together and find the commonalities and stuff like that. But before I get into my questions, I would like to go around and kind of introduce everybody and get a little bit of the background too, like where you came from and how you ended up in a data leadership role.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Johnathan Tate, and I'm the CDO at Cap Financial. I've been in IT for about 23 years, so I got to see back when BI was its own thing, data was its own thing, and then you saw big data. And over about the last 12 years, I started moving into data leadership roles where I was tasked with strategy, how are we going to use data? They say data is the new oil. What does that mean? And how do we use that for our organization? And so casting that vision and that story for the organization has taken me through a couple of CDO roles over the last about 8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm Shruti Sharma. I'm new-ish to technology. I don't know if I can say that, but
You can't say
I
you're
can't.
newish anymore.
Come on,
Come on.
like, well, I'm really a locally or homegrown talent is what I call myself, because I had a previous life science research experience for over a decade, got into technology as an application developer out of NSS, did data science. So Ingram's been really my space where I've gone from application development to data architecture, data science, data management, and now I'm a manager over a data engineering team. And we as an organization have been really intentional about chasing monetization, new revenue streams. That's something that I am talking about later today.
I'll be there.
Thank you. So, I mean, all of these kind of things. And I've been part of this conference. Like, this is my 6th time presenting, 8th time attending. So, like, this is my community. These are my people.
Love it.
All right, so Joe Melvin, I'm the America's Data Officer for Nissan. So love talking about cars, but also love talking about data. I started my career on the very technical side. So high performance tuning of Oracle databases, database administration. but then started to leverage that into what can we actually do with data to provide business value, not just, how can we store it and make it faster and better, but how can we generate business value from that? So last 7 to 8 years, moving up through leadership roles and supporting our users at Nissan that are on their analytics journey, empowering them with tools and technology and processes and best practices across the board.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right, taking this one.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Jason Beyer. I lead data and analytics at Bridgestone. Have a full stack team with business intelligence, data science, data engineering, data governance, etc. Really exciting things we're doing there. I've been with Bridgestone and in Nashville for 10 years. Prior to that, worked in life science, medical device, and other industries. Really got into data growing up through technology. So I've been in technology and data for 20 plus years, but really started to, kind of fall in love and that focus around data and the power of data and analytics and information prior to joining Bridgestone 10 years ago. And I've been really thrilled with kind of coming back into this role about 3 years ago, really launching a COE team that we have within the space. So, and it's an honor to be with this group as well. It's great to see the growth of the career field, the growth of the focus of data and analytics. But I think as we're going to talk here, every organization is trying to figure it out. Yeah. What is this thing? Where does it fit? What is the scope of it? And I think the exciting part of the contribution we can bring is we get to shape it at the early onset. And I think about where IT was 20 years ago, and organizations were figuring out what is the defining lines of information technology, what is this CIO thing, and I think we're kind of right at that moment in this field as well, and that's what's really exciting me.
I definitely feel that. Like the CIO role for a while was, depending on the organization, it was at the table making decisions, or it was beholden to the CFO, and every organization looked at their CIO in a different way, mostly because they spent a lot of money. And so you guys are in a position to potentially be in charge of a revenue stream. And so two of you kind of like alluded to it. Are all of you focused on revenue in some way, shape, or form? Or is it just how to organize, build, and all that kind of stuff?
For me, it didn't start that way. It started as really conglomerating and bringing together the cross-functional teams to organize around data and analytics. But earlier this year, we launched a new portal, for external partners to start monetizing that data and grow revenue through our data assets. So it's a recent phenomenon for us in particular.
So you're putting it directly to customers?
Directly to consumers and customers in the form of APIs for that developer community. So as Bridgestone, of course, we're working in fleet solutions, mobility solutions of all sorts. And the opportunity to work with our data, whether it's for website consumption, but increasingly, new forms of data products, the ability to put those out there and expose those to new forms of revenue. Think of, municipalities, trying to get better insights and intelligence on mobility-based data. Those are the opportunities that we're starting to open up.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'll share that if you're not focused on revenue as a CDO, you should be. At least, how do you enable that revenue growth, and how do you enable the growth of your company and those strategic goals? Because, the reality is we can all tell good stories and sell a data governance program, sell a data strategy, and they'll go along and support it for a time. But then you've got to start showing up with the so what. How are we enabling our growth as a business? How are we enabling revenue or reducing cost? In my role right now, we're building, and a lot of it is focused on how do we bring the right talent together, how do we consolidate, centralize, enable. But we're also thinking about what could we do with this data as we bring it together to create a revenue stream, or to help us develop new products and services within the business that do create that additional revenue. And so a lot of it is deep partnerships with business leaders who you can tie the work you're doing in your organization back to what they're doing to increase revenue for the company.
Yeah, and I'll just want to make sure that everybody knows the companies that are represented here. And then Joe, but we've got Caterpillar Financial, been around a long time. Ingram Content, been around a long time. Nissan, obviously, been around a long time. And then Bridgestone. So these are not the emerging companies. These are companies that have been established for a long time and now are getting into this digital world and in data. So
There's
Joe,
another thing that ties all of us together is that historically, analytics has not been an offering or is not being
Very
a
true.
central offering for each of these different spaces that we occupy. So, doing analytics or coming up with data offerings and products in a space such as this for a longer tenure companies, the mechanics, logistics of doing it are completely different when you from a company that's been maybe here for like a decade and they have a central analytics offering.
Very true. Yeah,
Yeah.
Joe.
And I think it correlates to your journey you were talking about with CIOs is 10 years ago, if you weren't saying every company is a tech company, you're probably falling behind. And now today, if every company's not a data company or data driven, you're going to have the opportunity or you're going to fall behind. You're not going to have those next level opportunities. So having a leader at the table to talk about what is the business value? How do we measure our data and analytics projects and products and how are they delivering to the business value, whether it's top line, bottom line, and having that conversation with other leaders. I think that's an opportunity we didn't have 5 years ago as data leaders, but now that we have a seat at the table, we're driving those conversations. And yes, to the holy grail of monetization and revenue generation, but there's other types of business value in there as well.
Yeah, and I would just add, you made a really good point, Shruti, that I've seen the evolution of going from data strategy to data and analytics, and whether it's a CDO or CDAO role, focusing on that end-to-end value from consumption and creation of data all the way down to the use of that data in analytics and in data sciences has been kind of a magic recipe, I know for me as a CDO and probably many others, because Cat Financial has had a data strategy for years, but it was primarily focused on data governance and data science. And now we're bringing that up and looking at business intelligence and data management and data product delivery and really rounding that out as a full offering for the company and a new vision that's resonating well and getting a lot of traction. So I think it's going beyond just data to look at how do you use that data and then bring that value to the company.
Yeah, and Jason, if you can bring it some context back, again, the average listener to get an idea of what you do. I mean, Bridgestone is one of those where you have the corporation, you have distributors, and you also have your own retail spaces. And so you're doing this in a lot of ways that the average person probably can see what you do. What are some of those use cases?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. So for a little quick context, Bridgestone, we're a global company within the Americas, which is the largest subsidiary based here in Nashville. We're a highly vertically integrated company. So as an enterprise team, we're working on use cases all the way from raw material sourcing through the full manufacturing supply chain, delivery out to our dealers, wholesalers, as well as the retail side of it. So largest company-owned points of sale in the automotive retail space as well. The other dimension of the company, which we refer to as Bridgestone 3.0, is going into mobility solutions offerings. So not only offering a great product that you can use and reuse through its life cycle, but solutions that come with it. And with that, that's really amplifying the need for data and insights and analytics. As you can imagine, those solutions driving fuel efficiency and in the use of that from a retail perspective, where you get service and how you get service of your vehicle, whether it's a fleet of one in your driveway to a fleet of thousands. And I think that's the interesting and compelling thing is the diversity of those use cases, the opportunity to work in a retail landscape where you're helping to find and make sure that the right product is in the right place at the right time, to fleet-based offerings to help your fleet be more sustainable. So you can get better life out of your tire product, your vehicle, and the interoperability between the two.
A quick question. So I work in mobility, and so when you said mobility multiple times now,
Yes.
and we actually got our start by working and supporting Bridgestone's mobile deployment, like back in 2005 and whatnot. But what are you talking? Are you talking about IoT devices in vehicles, or?
Yes, we have sensors and IoT connected in, of course, with the tire and wheel area.
Okay.
Connecting into the CAN bus and those sensors as well for increased insight. So we have fleet-based solutions that are pure play. They're not specific to tires. Of course, that integrated package that we call Fleet Care to be able to look at your holistic fleet. And you think about all the different segments of mobility. So we some of the early work we did in what we call off the road. So think of big mining operations and how they need to maximize uptime, especially as commodity prices swing. You have the large truck and bus fleets, but an increasing segment is that small, medium-sized fleet. So Charlie's HVAC company that you have that fleet of vans and vehicles that you need to keep operational, keep in service. So those mobility offerings that you can draw insights on, where is your fleet moving? What is the route planning that you want to do off of it? And what is the vehicle and tire health that is optimal to get, of course, some of the sustainability benefits, the economic benefits, and the social benefits.
That's really cool. So as a CDO, is it a part of your job to constantly generate new data? Is that something you're always pursuing?
Yeah, I'll take that for a minute. I think it's actually more part of our job to figure out what data is strategic and what's not. Because there's an ocean of data, both internally and externally. And I've seen programs fail because they tried to take every piece of data they can and figure out how to use it. I think the reality is find out what data is most strategic to the priorities and objectives of your board, of your executive team, and then go after that data as a CDO. Because there's other business teams, there's IT teams who are managing the day-to-day data. No problem usually. We need to focus on those strategic data assets.
Yeah, high value data assets is a term that I use over and over again with our customer teams. We have no shortage of data, connected cars at Nissan and the data generation we're doing on a every second basis across the board. But really keying on high value or strategic value data assets and making sure that we're, one, protecting those in the right way, and then two, leveraging those for new opportunities.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I think you just hit it. The idea of innovation versus risk. You're larger organizations, you have a lot of data now, and so you want to keep pushing the envelope on things. You want things to continue to evolve, but at the same time, you have to protect your data. And I know that's got to be an issue for you. Shruti, what are some of the challenges you're seeing there?
I mean, data is an asset and it is a liability. So I think everybody's kind of hinted upon it. All data is not equal. And then there is certain kind of high value data that affords a strategic advantage. And then there's high risk data, and you've got to be very categoric about it. Like, how badly do you need it? And does it actually feed into your life cycle of product development? How quickly can you incorporate it? Does it confer network effects? Like, how important it is to get PII, keep PII, how long do you want to keep that information? Because all of that is tied to liability. It better be a huge, huge benefit if you choose to hold on to it and if you choose to use it and all of that. So I think that, it's not about creating data, because data is getting created whether we are looking, whether we are, just the act of breathing. We have all these smart devices on us, and they're picking up everything that we're doing. Creation is not an issue, but how do you harness value from it, and how do you make a product out of it?
Yeah, on the protection side of it, I think that's an important kind of follow on to where we let in with the evolution of this role. And I think it should really be not viewed as a threat or in isolation or an island. It really needs to be connected into the fabric of your technology strategy, your business strategy, and those key partnerships and alliances. Later, I'll have a panel up there talking about the partnership we have with our enterprise architecture and our CISO, and those partnerships are just pivotal in our data strategy, because we have to be able to protect the data. We need to be able to be thinking about our governance strategies as well as our long-range architecture strategies as well. And so it's a role that really has to be communal within your organization. It has to be connected very wide across in order to be successful in getting the balance between innovation and risk.
Do you have to be proactive with that networking? Are you guys finding that kind of being the case? Okay, so just so you guys know, everybody's shaking their head yes.
Yeah, I think, reaching out and asking for those, regular one-on-ones with our CISO or regular one-on-ones with business leadership. Because if we don't proactively seek those, we're not getting the right information to help us make these decisions. As data is pervasive across the organization, we need those inputs to help guide the strategy. So
yeah, I want to give back to the community for just a minute, because if anybody's listening and they say, what does it take to be a CDO? It actually goes into this question. And I would say some of the most successful CDOs I've seen are advocate students of IT, but also advocate students of their business. And they've got some IT background, but they've also got that business knowledge, and they learn what it takes to make a company run, make supply chain work, increase revenue, accounting, finance. They kind of learn enough about those topics to then translate business need and technical challenges and need to how do we use data and analytics to make this work. And I'd say that then you can, what I do in my role is I spend a lot of time with my business leaders, getting to know them, getting to know their strategy, asking them questions like, what are the things you wish you could answer today that would help you advance your strategy, that would help you be successful, but you can't answer them? What data do you wish you had access to, but you don't have it? And I think that starts to uncover not just that relationship, but also a value add that we can come back and say, here's how we can help you. Never be an organization where you say, we're data governance, we're data strategy, you have to come use us. That's not going to work. No.
To paraphrase some of the things Johnathan's talking about, it's not about minding your business, but like minding the business, right? So you need to understand it. And carrying over some of the conversations we had at the breakfast table, there is this debate around, like, are you aligned with the business? Are you sitting on the business side of it, or are you sitting on the engineering or IT side of it? Irrespective of where you're sitting, you always have to lead with influence so that you partner wherever you're not. So there's a huge communal aspect or community aspect to it. Everything is not going to be positional because there's always going to be the other side or two sides of the coin. So there's a huge part of influence, there's a huge part of community and truly understanding value.
Mm-hmm. So
I was going to try to get us to clarify the CDO role, or let's say the normal data lead in an organization. Where do they fall? Where are you reporting to the because I think it's different in every organization. Yeah.
I don't think there's a template right now. And you can look at Gartner surveys, you can look at different magazine surveys. I don't think there's a template right now. Yeah. I don't think there's a standard answer. That's my point of view in talking with this community is I think organizations are figuring it out. And I think exactly to the comments, regardless of where you're at in the organization, the nature of having that indirect influence, that community and sphere of influence is important, regardless of where you sit and fall. My role in particular has moved within our organization. It doesn't change, those aspects, right? It changes who I report to, yes, and gives me more affinity in certain ways that have been very beneficial in our kind of strategic direction of where we've taken it. But it hasn't changed the fact that I need to be connected into the organization, thinking about the business strategy, the technology strategy, and the connection between those.
Yeah, I've reported to both business and IT, either the CIO or the CEO, president, CFO. And I think it just represents different challenges. If you're in the business, it's so critical to build that relationship with the CIO and the IT teams and make your story of success a joint story of success. And if you're in the IT world, you've got to be building those relationships with business leaders and making sure you're studying their business and know their business, know their strategy. And I used a word earlier called advocate student. And what I mean is you're learning what they do so you can advocate for what they need back to the rest of the organization. And you can do that through data and telling stories with data.
That seems like a good way to build bridges.
Good deal. We haven't mentioned some of the future stuff yet, but Charlie, I want to make sure you get to some of your questions.
Yeah. So what kind of we talked about who you report to, but what kind of teams do you manage? Like what are their responsibilities and all that kind of stuff? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we have a really cross-functional team at Nissan. Our primary goal a year or 2 years ago was platform support. So making sure that everyone on their analytics journey at Nissan had the tools, technology, processes they needed to do their job. But we've started to build out COE capabilities, building MVPs and proof of concepts to showing art of the possible for some of those other teams out there and starting to do more of the cutting edge type of pieces like generative AI and building that infrastructure so that we can leverage those new technologies and innovations that are coming out. So we've seen our scope grow as we've delivered, hopefully, success.
Yeah, Joe wins the prize.
I said
He was
Gen
the
AI
first one who
first?
said
Okay.
Gen AI today. Congratulations, you win the prize for today. And anyways, who else would like to add about what your teams look like?
Yeah, so I'll go. We're actually, elevating the data strategy and focusing on 5 core capabilities, and those are falling into 5 organizational teams, as it would. But the first is data science, followed closely by BI, and 2 teams that work very closely to analyze the data, but also build the visuals and tell the story. Then we've got data governance and management, because you've got to govern it. We've got data product delivery, because that's becoming a more important role in someone who can represent the data product as a whole back out to the business. And then lastly, data, I call it business enablement, or if you're in IT, you might call it, business architecture. But it's really that person that has that architecture mind, works with IT and others to build the foundation of your data hub, your data fabric, your analytics platform. And by kind of having those 5 core capabilities, I've been very successful in bringing those teams together to build a center of competence, I call it, where we can build what good looks like, we can innovate, and then we can help the business learn how to take that and do some of their own citizen data science, citizen BI reporting.
Yeah, it seems like you can get some purchase with that.
Exactly.
Expand out from there.
Would you like to go next?
You go ahead. I mean, it is where I'm concerned, I am at a different level of hierarchy. So I manage engineering, data engineering, making pipelines flow. We provide in our innovation hub all kinds of data needs for innovation. So making sure it's appropriately tagged, it's appropriately classified, it's appropriately modeled, agnostic or not very deeply tied to how it's used. So I talk about like you're classifying your Lego blocks and allowing people to build things quickly and efficiently. But we work closely with downstream partners and, providers to bring it.
Well, it's critically important, right? In my case, we're organized, and the scope of my responsibilities is we're a center for enablement across the organization, at Center for Excellence or Expertise, whatever you want to describe it. But
This seems to be the common motif.
yeah, it's you hear the consulting hub and spoke models, right? And we embrace that. We have areas of specialization in business intelligence, in data science and advanced analytics, and kind of moving that to AI and ML. We have data engineering and the full stack of the cloud data platform, data governance and data management, as well as some specialization in HR analytics. One of the recent additions we added in was also our integration services team. So we moved that from IT into the data group, and felt that's a really uniquely positioned thing to be part of data analytics, because that's how the data moves and flows in the organization. Yeah. It also controls our external interface around e-commerce and EDI and API integration, that as we thought about, okay, how do we want to go to market with data products? Well, that's going to be central to that strategy. And that's really the connection method that we wanted to embrace and really kind of look at that path for data monetization. In addition to those towers of specialization, we've organized and we have portfolio managers who really are focused on specific business areas, who have that intimacy, who have that advocacy student kind of role of really understanding and thinking about execution. What is the strategy for that particular business or functional area? What do they need from a data and analytics perspective today and in the future? And kind of building product team structures around that as well. So that's the scope of our team, and kind of having that full stack. But probably in addition to being really, really proud about the team and the culture we've created, the ability to really connect in the organization and have that connected user community. It started in the BI user community. We've expanded it, but we've really kind of embraced that as a principle to say, everything we're building, we need to build in a federated way so we can empower people, whether it's our cloud data platform, our API management platform, of course, our BI tools that, there's training curriculums, there's data literacy programs that, teammates across the organization can use it. We're empowering, we're encouraging them to use it, not out of threat or fear, but really out of that encouragement of innovation where it needs to happen, but then being a partner so we can help scale things, right? When they're running into scaling challenges, or extending something that says, this was really great in this business unit, it's really applicable across these other 4. Let's really mirror that in the others, or where they just have higher complexity of challenges. That's when they, consult our team to actually do that work as well on some of the more highly complex, complicated challenges.
That's cool. It sounds like it's a work in progress for sure. Because like you identify a group, you bring them over. Like I like hearing that you're moving folks or moving teams under the CDO like vertical and whatnot. Because back in the day, like CIOs, like the ones that didn't consolidate as quickly as possible. Look, we're in a situation that different departments would buy different SaaS platforms at different times for different lengths of time and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like from what you guys are talking about, you're really approaching this holistically from the start. Like you're starting right here, but then you're wrapping around the entire business. And since it feels like businesses these days are built on data, then that feels like a really good approach.
Yeah, and I think that's a shift I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years is, the support we used to give to the biggest data team that was there on one siloed focused ability or capability. And now it's how can we support everybody in their data and analytics journey that is an employee, customer, vendor that works with us. How can we support the entire breadth of the organization, whether it's transforming Excel into Tableau or just getting you off of Excel, to the data science, machine learning use cases, that are going to transform the way we do business.
Yeah, I was going to say, every business that I've been a part of, they see data science, they see Gen AI, and they say, we want to do that. And so many times they'll go hire resources to do that in their business, but they hire one person. Well, now that person's stuck on an island, right? And they know the business, they learn it, but then the business loses that knowledge as soon as they go to another career track or they promote somewhere else. And one thing to your point about centralizing the team, it's really about empowering your team with a united vision, mission, and purpose around data analytics, and then giving them help, giving them resources, upskilling, letting your data analytics people go on vacation and not have to take their laptop because they've got others on the team that can back them up. And I've seen that piece of it, providing leadership and cover and purpose for your team, as one of the greatest defining moments of success for bringing the team together and bringing data analytics together, and they feel empowered and they go do amazing things.
Yeah, and I think even career pathing, giving that next opportunity for an up-and-coming, talent that you see in your organization, there used to be a ceiling that was there to some degree, but now we can say, well, I think you'd be great leading a supply chain team, and we're using the same technology across the organization, so that should be an easy move for you. You're just going to have to come up to speed on a new kind of business unit.
Yeah. And we're about ready to hear a lot of traffic coming behind us here at this as the next session gets out. But we've got to ask about the future, what you're seeing. Obviously, things have changed dramatically. What are you noticing as you start looking at Gen AI, of course, or just artificial intelligence? All of you have been doing that. You've been doing some form of artificial intelligence, machine learning, and everybody thinks it just started in November. That's not true. So what are you noticing? Is it an education advocacy side right now, or are you starting to get into things very quickly? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Johnathan, why don't you start?
Yeah, I'll share one example. First, I'd say if you're seeing AI and you're in data analytics, don't worry, your job's not going to go away. If you evolve with it, if you learn how to use it. And that's one experience I had. I had a senior developer in BI who had worked for me in the past, and we were just talking about AI in general and ChatGPT, and he said, I love it. He goes, now instead of having to write the DAX queries in Power BI, I design the report, I design how to tell that story with data, and then I explain it in some detail to ChatGPT, and it actually writes the code for me in Power BI to develop the report. He goes, now I can develop multiple reports a week instead of one report every 2, 3, 4 weeks. And so I think we're just going to see AI, Gen AI, accelerate our ability to deliver these products in data analytics in the long term.
I think a good question for everybody to ask themselves is, are you doing something that is repetitive? Because if you're doing something that is repetitive, then you need to do something else, because that kind of function probably will be done by an automated piece. That thing can be taken over. But what if you're doing something that's creative? If you are connecting the dots, if you are doing something that cannot be automated in a repetitive manner, then you're fine, you're safe, and you'll continue to grow. Because a lot of engineers have fallen into the trap of doing similar things for really long periods of time. So I know we talk about like, well, so and so has 10 years of experience. But what does that mean? Have you been doing 1 year worth of stuff for 10 years? Will that count as 10 years of experience? Or have you done different kind of things over a course of a decade? And how does that experience translate into it? So I mean, it's not a cautionary tale, but like, please definitely take a lens through which you look at your experience. What have you been engaging in over a period of time and what it means for you? This is going to be empowering for people. But as a user, now people expect a lower threshold of interaction. Like they want things more intuitive. They want things to not have to work hard to interact with. And that's going to be a theme that everybody has to get up on, on that train. You can't expect users to engage with your platform if it's difficult to engage with. So that's going to be a theme that, I mean, if ChatGPT is made anything more prevalent, like it's like you've got to really make it user friendly.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point you had at the beginning is as you automate, some of the things that are your day-to-day or hour-to-hour tasks, that's going to free up our employees to do more business value add activities, like to be able to think more creatively, to be able to push the needle a little bit and be those entrepreneurs that we hear, that everyone wants their employees to be. We're taking a very practical approach to generative AI. One of our focus is to make sure that we're hitting some of the workplace efficiency use cases first, because those are a little bit more controlled. We can use publicly trained models, and through that experience and technology that we're going to deploy, we can start to say, how can we leverage Nissan assets in large language models, and how can we build something more customized to our specific use cases? And then probably tertiary start to approach some of the B2B, B2C use cases and opportunities that we can pursue in generative AI and those advanced chatbot functionalities, because those introduce more risk. Anytime you roll something out to a larger audience or our customers, there's an opportunity there for a little bit of risk in that equation. So we want to go with the practical approach and controlled data protection, rolling things out to our workforce first, and then B2B, B2C opportunities.
Okay. I think I agree with all the comments so far, and there's lots of things I could go into in answering this question around generative AI, the changing landscape of privacy and regulations, cloud compute. I think we're still in the early days of seeing the full power of cloud computing. But when you ask about the future, my mind goes down a different road, and it's maybe a bit too existential, but I think about the evolution of our role as being a broker for truth in the organization. When you look at, this information age and the advancement in society and the, geopolitical dynamics and all these other factors, right? Finding what is true and what is fact is getting harder and harder. And I think a key part of our role within the organization and within, call it the broader societal aspect, is really being a broker for truth. And that includes, adding citations at the bottom of your Gen AI prompt, response. It's adding in things like we were talking about, putting your, logo, this is a certified, trusted data source within the organization. And I think that evolution of the role, if you think historically, that has largely been concentrated around the CFO in an organization. I think that partnership between data and analytics and the CFO is going to get more and more strengthened over the next decade.
So I agree with that, but for a different, not necessarily for a different reason, but also for another reason. So going to the publicly trained models versus privately trained models, like there's going to be an opportunity for investment in the near future in a capital expenditure kind of way. And CFOs typically love that kind of stuff. So are you guys looking into that at all, as far as like, either buying or like buying your own equipment and, loading it into, AWS or Azure or whatever, or actually like I can't find any extreme drawbacks to doing an on-prem server setup type thing where you're not having to pay for compute power per minute, but I don't know how the costs shake out. And it seems like you guys would be having those types of conversations if anybody is.
Yeah, I think we actually had that conversation a little bit during the breakfast, at least at my table, where we talked about just in general, the cloud migration and modernization that we've been doing. I've done at 3 companies now. is always, let's go cloud first, cloud first, cloud first. And as you get up there and you start to see your operating expenditures increase because it's a subscription-based model, where do we need to flex? Where do we need to bring that back and make more of a CapEx investment in some core technology that's, differentiating for us, as well as, having that cost opportunity and driving value from something. So, it's definitely something we keep an eye on, and we work with our finance teams. We have an entire FinOps team to manage, our cloud spend and track it and tag it back to business units to measure the value that we're getting out of these investments.
Yeah, I'm going to comment kind of agnostic of current company. I would say it's really the culture in the company you're with that would probably drive that. If you're working for a brand company that invests heavily in their image, invests in their capabilities, there's probably going to be a push to go with the Ferrari offering of cloud services and in-memory compute and all those things, Gen AI. If you're working for a company that's a nonprofit, on the opposite side of that, right? They're focused on cost and what are we getting for investing that cost, because we have, we owe it to our benefactors and things to answer that question as a good steward. So I think it's important to know that culture and understand it as a leader, and then invest where it makes sense with that value statement behind it, even in the other end of that spectrum. But yeah, everyone at this point is getting into cloud. Everyone's getting these tools. So now it's what are we doing with it to gain that competitive edge? And more importantly, what are we doing with our talent to invest in them and unlock the genius that lies within them that can do something that other companies can't?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a blend of public-private, and I think a lot of organizations are moving towards more of that private offering. What can we build ourselves? What can we, to kind of look at the protection side of it? Certainly the public offerings are going to outpace, how those are evolving, but I think increasingly you're seeing the opportunity to incorporate those into either on-premise or virtual private cloud types of capabilities. But there's a lot of, I don't think the hype of generative AI is going away, but I do think there's a normalization that's going to occur in the next, I'll say, 6 to 12 months.
I mean, I think it covers quite the gamut of everything. It ties back down to like, what's the value? Where do you invest? But I think especially in the current climate, we're all coming off of the pandemic, and most businesses want to be cautious about what the new normal is. So it's not only about AI and Gen AI, but also being mindful of what is the landscape. How is the context going to look different? What does today mean and how is it going to be different from yesterday? So a lot of investment reasons, fields are going to be informed by where the market settles, if it settles. So, a lot of like wealth management conversation, there was a talk, really good conversation about like when is the inflation going to settle down? What is that new settle going to be? Is it 2%, 3%, 4%? Like when you really get down to it, that's what is going to dictate a lot of investment decisions for any organization.
Yeah, that's really good. I think we've taken up a lot of your time today. We really appreciate it. Very busy people, and we're very gracious to sit down. And I may have forced you a little bit, but that's okay. And I really appreciate. Well, what I like is I'm sitting with the people that are not only in leadership roles, but you're also leaders in our community, and trying to build this great cohesive group so that you don't have to do this alone. And so I'd like to end on a positive kind of thing, Charlie, and as well as for you, but just very general, what excites you about the next few years?
You actually said it. For me, at this point, it's giving back to the community and how do I teach others what I've learned? Because I've worked for some really great leaders. I've worked for some really bad leaders. And I've had mentors that invested in me. And so I'm really excited about just the mission of NTC, the work that we're doing with Elite and the mentors or mentees, and just giving back to advance our people. One thing about me you'll learn, I talk about people all the time because that's really where it's at. It's the people around you. And so I'm excited about helping them advance in their career. I often learn just as much out of those experiences when I'm helping someone else.
Growth excites me. For this space, for the people, for my organizations, yeah, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, so I recently had a milestone birthday, and one of my mentors actually said to me,
I don't know what that means, Charlie.
It's
You have
it's
no
a
idea what a milestone
it's got a
birthday
zero
is.
at the end.
You look
but-
a lot younger than me.
Okay, so my mentor said to me, he's like, Joe, do you realize you have more days behind you than you do in front of you? At
Speak
that
for
point, it was a
yourself.
very painful comment to take in. But as I digested it, it's very much like in the second half of my career, how can I continue to give back? And whether that's with the NTC and the ambassador board, I love coaching youth sports. I really want to take and build the future talent. So having the opportunity to be a people leader in an organization like Nissan is really give back and get that next generation of talent up and going, and hopefully with that same mentality to give back in this community. So.
It's hard to go last with a question like that because so many great things are said. But I think it a lot of the same things that excite me. It's the community, the ability to connect in with a peer group like this, and just not only to that effect, but also to how do we give back? How do we use data for good within the community? And what can we all bring? Our skills, talents, but also from our organizations that matches our values and mission. The people, of course, just the inspiration that I get from teammates every single day, how they're learning agility and the things that they're creatively coming up with. And I think the opportunity to contribute, more and more within the organization from a value proposition with data. That's what excites me.
That's awesome.
Charlie, do you see why I'm so excited about our community here in Nashville?
Heck yeah.
These are. I'd like to say they're the anomaly, but they're not. This is what I hear over and over again. And I think you started off great by just saying, giving back to the community. We are creating a new field, right? We did not have a traditional path into data, and so we're making it up as we go, and we hope we're doing it right. And now that we've had the lessons learned, we want to help others not have to go through the pains that we went through, right?
Make new mistakes.
Make new mistakes. I like it. And I think that has been very genuine from a lot of leaders like yourself. It is amazing to hear those kind of comments. And I can't thank you enough for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the feels at the table are real right now for sure. But I can't wait until next year when we sit back down and we talk about how everything has changed from now to then in the CDO role and Gen AI and all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so now we have to go do the work.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Any
get out of
final
here.
thoughts from anybody?
Thank you for having us. It's a great podcast. Long-time listener, first-time contributor.
Really?
So yeah.
First-time caller, yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for having us.
Yeah,
really.
appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, thank you. I could call you some great friends, and he wants me to wrap it up. And I'm just gonna stare at Charlie for a second and say, anything else?
No.
He says no. And so for that, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding.
And Shruti.
And I think we still haven't settled the debate about who's the other Charlie.
I have a very distinguished group that can tell you which. No, with that, we will leave that as a cliffhanger. And Charlie,
That's it.
until next time.
All right. If you've got something exciting you want to talk about, let us know. Okay. So I was happy to be part of such an insightful conversation, and I'm looking forward to all of the conversations we have in the future as well. Because I don't know if you appreciate it as much as I do, but longtime listener, first time contributor,
Yeah.
it touched my heart.
There's CDOs that are listening to us.
I know.
That's what you're referring to. That was
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, Joe was telling me about a couple of the episodes. Now, they may have done that because I kind of told them we wanted on the CDO, but I don't think so, because they knew a lot about what we've been doing.
Yeah, well, just the thought that the CDO roundtable has also heard me talk about toe spreaders is it put me off for a minute, but I was like, I don't care.
Yeah. Well,
So, what was one of your? What's your top takeaway from the roundtable?
yeah. Again, it was the first time I got to know Johnathan, and I thought that was great to hear his insight, since he's the longest tenured person during that. I really liked the comment by Jason Beyer when he talked about data is kind of the truth of an organization, and they are now the safeguard of that. And so when people are going to be making decisions or needing data, they're needing it because they want the truth.
Yeah.
They want reality, and it really ties into our perception of what data truly is.
Yeah.
That is a really important position then, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to continue to be.
That's one of the things that I've seen is like it's not like there's never missteps with your forecasting and things like that, but the business units that I've seen so far that are starting to lean into their data scientists and their data in general are starting to win. Like their forecasting is really on point, and essentially anytime they've got a question, they just hop on over to the data team and say like, "Hey, can you take a look at this?" Like, does that sound familiar at all?
Oh, very much so. And in looking at that, the insights we were able to get, like Shruti, just unbelievable. Now she doesn't have the title of Chief Data Officer, and she's, that's a large organization that she works at, and so she's kind of in charge of just this one component of it. But they have like 15 verticals there. I mean, it's
still data leadership, though.
Oh, absolutely. And her thoughts, I thought, were spot on. Especially, she's one of those that I've known her ever since she went to the Nashville Software School, and seeing her go to where she is today has been really, really cool. But I think everybody, I hope everybody was able to be heard on that for you all. But in thinking of that, Charlie, where do you see, based on what you heard, you said it's going to become more of a thing, but let's go 2-3 years, whatever out. What is the CDO's place then? Is that really going to be a thing, or is that going to be enveloped into the CIO? What are your thoughts on that position?
So the way I see it, like we'll just use a 5-year timeline. Like I see the CDO pretty quickly getting a table or a seat at the table. And what I mean by that is like you've got your C-suite folks. Like you got your CEO, your CFO, which is your chief financial officer. You've got your chief SO, which can be chief strategy or chief security, depending on what you got going on.
Yeah.
But you've got a lot of C-level jobs, and only a few of those are at the table, quotey fingers. And what that means is they're the actual leaders. And so CIOs back in the day were always behind the CFO because the CFO could keep them from overspending.
Yeah.
What I see happening especially with the chief data officers, is they get to come sit at the table, and then pretty soon every other executive is going to be turning to the data officer every time they need something answered. Hey, we want to do this. Let's run it through our CDO and their team. Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Because data is kind of an asset, right?
It is. Well, it is now.
Yeah. But when you think of like the marketing component, the finance component, these are almost functions as opposed to the asset. I'm just trying to, because now you think about it, there's now 3 C-suite level tech or data positions.
So the CIO, the CDO,
CISO,
CISO,
Chief Information Security Officer, which that one I think is going to stay around a while because it's almost like it's been mandated now.
I think so. From some of the conversations that we had with the Roundtable, though, I think they could pretty easily bring security in-house and then just get rid of the CISO.
Well, where the CISO is now important is when I actually, there is a CISO peer group in town as well. They've been around for about a year. I spoke to them about AI a little bit ago. They need to be up to speed on laws and legislation.
Oh yeah,
just as much as technology, actually more so. So they're worried about GDPR and all of the different data privacy laws in the 50 different states. And so then when they hear AI, they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm just trying to keep up with data privacy. Now you're telling me there's this new thing called artificial intelligence. So I think there's a place for it. Now, will that be more of a legal function in the future? That's a good question. But I think, hey, if every company's a data company, 3 C-suite level people, specifically in technology, is actually about right.
Yeah. It's especially at the bigger companies. At the bigger companies, you could argue that you could put a couple more in there. But the chief data officer specifically, that position specifically, I think is just it's gonna grow and grow as far as like what the expectations coming from the department are,
Yeah.
and the number of CDOs overall. Because you can think about it from a hierarchy perspective, where enterprises are way up here, and they're going to be the first to get CDOs. But then, like you said earlier, if you are a data company, you can be mid-market and still need a CDO, because that person is building your data strategies, and not just like how to make money off of it, but how to incorporate it in your day-to-day like work functions as well.
Yeah, and let's think about what that means. And you heard a little bit of that, but to be specific, when you say CDO, obviously you're worried about data, and then you get into the technical side, and you're worried about infrastructure. You're going to be cloud. You're going to be on-prem.
Right.
Are you,
do you do the data lake or the data cathedral?
Oh, cathedral, or yes, or maybe there's going to be a data heaven at some point. Who knows? But then you have to start thinking about data governance and privacy, and now you add in AI, and it becomes so much. It's a pretty complex job just with that, and forget about, they're not even incorporating AI yet into what they're doing. Most companies, again, give us 2 years and everybody's going to have their own private LLMs.
Heck yeah.
And then it'll be, how do you use that and leverage that with the open AIs of the world and things. I thought it was really interesting, and I don't remember if Joe said this on, I don't think he said it on during our podcast, but I don't think I'm giving any secrets away. But for larger companies, and remember, he works at Nissan.
Yeah, they're pretty big, I hear.
They're not small. Even a Nissan is on like a 3-month wait for enterprise-wide use of ChatGPT and OpenAI's infrastructure.
Yeah.
So I mean, if Nissans of the world are on a wait list, what does that mean to the rest of the companies? So we can't just say, well, everybody needs to get enterprise-wide OpenAI. The pipeline, it's a resource issue at this point. For that to happen, I mean, we don't realize the amount of energy we are using to do that work. I mean, it's expensive. It's a lot of machines, and it's a lot of electricity.
What's the catchphrase for that these days? ERG or something like that?
I don't know.
There's
a term for it?
Yeah, there's a tag for the footprint that all of our electronics makes. And so business ethics and business responsibility people are pushing that as something that should be considered before we make our decisions.
Gotcha.
And it's catching on, but there's still there's a social component to it that probably needs to be ironed out before everybody accepts it.
Wow. Well, I will tell you what I'd like to do is it would be great to get 1 or 2 or those guys back in a quiet studio as well. Yeah. I think that's a great introduction for people if they've for the CDO. I think that's going to be the first time people are hearing from CDOs.
Yeah.
In most cases. So there you go. You're welcome, folks. But let me ask you this. Your first time at the Analytics Summit, so your first time immersed in this, what were some of your perceptions? I've got a new one, by the way. I've got to say it, but you go first.
Well, I don't want you to forget, so you go, and then I'll tell you how my experience was.
The number one theme was the connection between data and people. That was the number one theme in every conversation. So we were, of course, talking about AI, but everybody was trying to figure out how to connect it back to business decisions that truly affect people. And I kept hearing that, we can't just go completely technology and think about everything's automated and artificial intelligence, but instead, how do we do this in a way to enhance
how do we
employees?
feed this back into our system to improve quality, production, like emotions, all that kind of stuff. Like that's a good takeaway.
And it's something I want to spend a lot of time thinking about is this connection, because I think that's where my sweet spot is. It's like, am I a completely a data person, or am I completely a people person? I'm in the middle.
You're glue. We talked about it.
Yeah, I'm glue. That's right. I'm this gluey thing that's stuck to your fingers that you're trying to knock off.
But
right?
you make it. You stick everybody together.
I try. Yeah,
you're good at putting communities
and
together.
that's what people are wanting.
Yeah,
that's what people are wanting. Now that might be just because that's the people I am surrounded by, but I heard that was a recurring theme that I heard. So what are some of your, now you interviewed, and so to give everybody a little sneak peek, we interviewed a ton of people with kind of the same questions. We're going to be doing montages with that for future episodes. But what were some of those recurring themes then?
Well, we talked to go back to what you're referencing. Like Sean and I did a bunch of like one-on-one interviews. We did a couple that had 2 or 3 people in it at once, and those will be longer form and they'll come out separately. But we're going to start putting out videos that are anywhere between 2 and 10 minutes or so. And we ask people, what's your story? How'd you get into data? Surprise, surprise. Everybody's got a different story.
Yep.
We asked them what they're excited about, what they intended to learn at the Analytics Summit, or why they came to the Analytics Summit. Because some people it's networking, some people it's like I want to hear about this, I want to hear about that, overwhelmingly, I think that from a sense of community perspective, this is my first time getting into this show, and I've been a part of other shows for decade plus. And I was telling you this earlier. My proximity to you and interviewing so many people, I got to skip about the first 5 years of acclimating to the environment. So
but a lot of people knew you there, so maybe it was your first time there, but it wasn't your first time meeting a lot of
the folks. Yeah. Like I cross streams with a lot of the folks at the NTC and stuff. But this, first time being here, so it's my first time seeing so many of these people in their home territory.
Yeah.
And like I know enough to keep up and understand like what people are talking about, but I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And so some of the questions, what are you excited about most in the next couple of years? Is like those are some really insightful answers, and again, everybody had their own version of what that is.
Yeah,
and so you'll get to see that as they come out, or the listeners out there get to see it as they come out.
Yeah, and you did other long form interviews. We did one with the keynotes, one from Oracle, one was Asha. I'm going to butcher her last name. I don't want to say it.
I can't help you there.
But we have that, and we also have a great one. I don't know if I've really mentioned where I used to work before Belmont, but it was Middle Tennessee State University. Very proud of that. My son goes there, and I was there for almost 20 years. And my department was Information Systems and Analytics, and so 3 of the female faculty that were with me there at that time. I think I was part of hiring every one of the ones that were there. And that's Stephanie Toddy, Amy Harris, and Sam Zaza. You did an interview with.
Yes,
and
Sean and I did.
Shauna was with you on that. Yeah. And I know I was at this conference. I was I had to do a lot of speaking both days.
You were back and forth between Belmont.
I was basically at 2 conferences at the same time, and I spoke 4 times in 2 days. It was fun. It was fun.
But back to the MTSU roundtable, like those ladies were super duper insightful, and their minds are in it, as far as like there's a lot of stuff to figure out in education, and they're all thinking about it. It's all it's all at the front of their brains, so to speak,
which is why we have to do a data in education, and I think we're going to highlight that one that you did. So I'm excited. I haven't heard that yet, and so 3 very good friends. I'm excited for 5 if I include you and Shauna, of course, in that. So it'll be a great conversation. I'm looking forward to that. I think we all want to know, and I think those are 3 people that have always been thinking ahead.
Yeah.
So that's great.
I didn't know that part, but there definitely are now.
Yeah. So I'll tell you a quick little, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for our Data in Education podcast. What else you got, Charlie, as we wrap up this CDO Roundtable episode?
I'm just looking forward to all the people that are coming from out of town next year to the Analytics Summit.
Yeah.
It's quickly becoming the place to be if you're anything with data.
Yeah.
And not just data, but data and AI. Because from what I understand, this year's shift into AI was like, it was a hard right almost to be so inclusive.
But that was based on the presentations that we were given. So I'm on the committee for the Analytics Summit. And so I was part of the seeing all of the presentations come in. Those were back in May when we received most of those, and overwhelmingly half or more were artificial intelligence based. So, I mean, we were just putting on the docket what people wanted to talk about. And we were very interested in all of those topics. So a lot of Gen AI, a lot of how to monetize it. It is a very practical conference.
Yeah.
You can leave there and use that stuff the next day.
Yeah. But for all of you CDOs around the country, this is where you need to be next year.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Because you definitely want to participate in that group if you can.
And you want to be part of next year's CDO Roundtable.
That's what I'm talking about.
With the Data for All podcast.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that
You want to be part of our next Roundtable next year.
We'll
which
be beating them
definitely do
away
this
with
again.
the bat.
Absolutely. I love it. I think they'll let us back.
I think
and
so.
We'll be back there. All right. Anything else, Charlie?
That's it.
All right. So thank you all for listening to our first installment from the Analytics Summit, the CDO Roundtable. And for the Data for All podcast, please not only listen to us, but watch us on our YouTube channel. And the best way to find us is by going to our website, and that's dataforall.io. That's data, the number 4, all.io. And for the Data for All podcast, I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding.
And until next time.